Wayne was preparing for a trip to Tennessee. The day before, he was working at a refinery, and they'd been rushing due to increased demand from clients. The weather was perfect, and Wayne was excited for a trip to see his family in Tennessee. He was taking the bus because his car was being worked on. After a short taxi trip, he had about 20 minutes to wait for the bus, so he went for a walk around the bus station. The trip was expected to take around 10 hours. Suddenly, a guy screamed that there was a bomb on this bus, and if the bus stopped or slowed down to 15 miles per hour, it would explode. The bus driver started speeding up, and one of the passengers quickly contacted the police without the bomber noticing. Wayne texted his parents that his bus had been hijacked by a bomber. He told them he loved them very much and just wanted to be with them. As the bus continued down a highway, a construction site appeared ahead. Traffic was moving slowly as the road was filled with cars, and the bus driver had no choice but to slam into a car in an attempt to maintain his speed. The bus lost control and collided with other vehicles before slowing below 15 miles per hour. Suddenly, the bomb detonated, creating a massive shockwave that blasted nearby vehicles. The explosion killed 15 people on the bus. 5 other drivers died, along with 3 police officers who'd been caught in the blast. Mr. Winters was leaving work to go home and enjoy the weekend with his friends at a beach house. The weather was very hot that day, and most people were preparing to go swimming or visit water parks. Pasha was an older man who hadn't driven in over a month. He had an appointment to see a doctor about his dementia. His grandson told him he couldn't go with him because he already had a meeting scheduled, so Pasha decided to go alone. He set up a navigation system that his grandson had bought for him and taught him how to use. Everything was going fine, as his medication was keeping his dementia under control. Mr. Winters joined the highway and hit the gas pedal to enjoy the open road. While trying to follow his navigation system, Pasha missed a turn and began to panic. He tried to turn around on the highway on-ramp before driving the wrong way down the highway. At that time, Mr. Winters and multiple other vehicles approached, leading to a massive pileup. Witnesses called emergency services before they started assisting the involved drivers. Pasha lost consciousness. Mr. Winters had to be given CPR, but thankfully he was able to be stabilized. Other drivers were transported to the hospital. Thankfully, nobody else was seriously injured. Julie was enjoying her weekend in the countryside. She was planning to visit the city to get some groceries for dinner. She told her kids to clean the dishes so they'd have something to do while she was gone. Ethan was hauling lumber from downtown out to the countryside. Traffic was moderate at the time, but many impatient drivers were dangerously overtaking each other. Julie was looking forward to cooking her favorite meal, salmon with sweet potatoes. Ethan was approaching Julie as traffic got busier. Suddenly, 3 vehicles began overtaking him on a narrow road. At the same time, Julie was in the oncoming lane. When she saw the vehicles, she slammed on the brakes and lost control before colliding with one of them head-on. The impact started a chain reaction involving 3 other vehicles, including Ethan's. First responders arrived immediately after receiving 112 calls from witnesses. Julie was transported to the hospital with broken arms, head injuries, a dislocated shoulder, and a severe spinal injury. The driver of the white sedan didn't survive. Neither did the occupants of the green sedan, as they were crushed by the van. The driver of the van was transported to the hospital with a broken ankle and wrist. Ethan suffered from severe PTSD that requires ongoing psychiatric treatment. Sakura was leaving work after a long day. He called his wife to invite her out on a date so they could enjoy the nice weather for the rest of the day. Meanwhile, Wang was sitting on a bus, coming home after a trip in Beijing. The trip had been long, the weather was warm, and he was ready to spend the rest of the day at home in his apartment. The bus was headed downhill on a narrow road. Suddenly, the brakes stopped working, and the bus became uncontrollable. There was a sharp turn ahead, and oncoming traffic was approaching. The bus flew out of the curve and crashed head-on into 2 vehicles. Sadly, one of those vehicles was Sakura's. The driver of the other car didn't survive, and Sakura was taken to a hospital after sustaining multiple injuries and fractures. A young man was driving his Nissan Patrol along the road when his tire ruptured, so he pulled over to check it out. After shutting his door and opening his trunk, he started working to replace the flat tire. Suddenly, the drunk driver of a Subaru was driving really fast and crashed into his Nissan, crushing the young man's head and killing him instantly. Authorities discovered that the driver was an 18-year-old man carrying a Glock 17 and 7 bottles of alcohol. A funeral was held to remember the young man who had been tragically killed. The drunk driver was convicted of murder, evasion, and traffic citations before being sentenced to 20 years in prison. His driver's license was also revoked.
For detailed injury information and exclusive footage, please support us on Patreon.